Whether it's the Egyptians and their pyramids, the Romans and their Colosseum, or the Chinese and their magnificent walls, great men, great civilizations, and great empires have always sought to hang their pictures in the large echoing gallery of history's museum. And sometimes they use large bricks, mortar, and the sweat from the brows of 1,000 men to paint these elaborate pictures in the form of landmarks and monuments, huge structures, and defiance of the march of time, just to be able to say 3 simple words to the people of the future: we were here. In this video, we're going to be walking through this gallery filled with human ingenuity and creativity. We're going to be looking at what happened to the greatest monuments in history. The Machu Picchu is a breathtaking landmark located in the eastern Cordillera of southern Peru. But it isn't just some picturesque landmark. Machu Picchu is a 15th century Inca citadel, wrapped in a striking landscape that stands on a 7,970-foot mountain ridge. The Inca citadel was first discovered in 1911 by American historian and explorer Hiram Bingham, who, by the way, was the first to draw international attention to the site, even though evidence points that others may have been there before he came along. However, there was barely anything that indicated this site held one of the most artistic and architectural masterpieces that proved a legacy of the Inca civilization. Further excavation in 1912 by Bingham and his team proved that this was indeed a historical site that used to be inhabited before the citadel and was abandoned following the Spanish conquest in the 16th century. Believed to have been built in the 1450s for the Inca emperor Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui, the Inca citadel comprises approximately 200 structures, including the Room of the Three Windows, Temple of the Sun, and the Intihuatana, a ritual stone associated with the astronomical clock of the Inca. Most of these structures were built with polished dry stone walls, so uncovering all of these took strenuous effort to cut through foliage that had grown through the walls. However, by 1976, about 30% of Machu Picchu had been restored, unveiling a fascinating landmark that's not only awe-inspiring, but also celebrates the architectural skills of ancient Inca builders. Although most of the buildings have been reconstructed so that tourists can get a better understanding of how the landmark used to be, there's no denying that this place still gives you chills as it takes you back thousands of years and is in fact a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Although it became a tourist center, not all these tourists were lucky. Several deaths were reported due to altitude sickness, hiking accidents, and floods, and UNESCO was heavily criticized for this, especially given the location of the site. As an aftermath of the 2022 to 2023 Peruvian protests against Dina Boluarte and the Congress of Peru, where many foreign tourists were stranded, the Machu Picchu was closed from the public indefinitely on January 22nd of 2023. Well, maybe that was for the best? It's kind of hard to tell. The Parthenon stands out for its sheer beauty, even in the state of ruin that it's in. A former temple dedicated to Athena, the Greek goddess of wisdom and warfare, the Parthenon is located on the Athenian Acropolis and is one of the most incredible landmarks pretty much ever. Remember, Athens and Greece were a force to be reckoned with in the ancient eras, especially after the defeat of the Persians in 490 to 479 BCE. From the arts to literature and even philosophy, these guys showed that they had it all. And the Parthenon was testimony that also excelled in architecture. In 447 BC, under the supervision of Phidias, a respected sculptor, the architects Ictinus and Callicrates started working on the building project that would turn out to be a gigantic temple measuring 101.34 feet wide and 228.14 feet long from the building space. It also comprised 46 outer columns and 26 inner columns, with each column having about 20 flutes. The roof of the temple was covered with large overlapping marble tiles that created a stunning view. The Parthenon was completed in 438 BC, and in that same year, a breathtaking gold and ivory statue of Athena, made by Phidias, was placed in the temple. Other sculptors decorated the inside of the temple, and decoration of the interiors was completed in 432 BC. The Parthenon not only served as the temple of Athena, or Minerva as the Romans called her, it also served as a treasury. Well, the Greeks didn't get to enjoy this beauty for long. By the 6th century AD, it was attacked by the Christian Byzantines, who conquered Greece and converted the temple into a Roman Catholic church. And some of the sculptures included the Athena statue were removed from the temple. It's pretty sad, right? Yeah, that's not all, though. The Ottoman conquest also happened around 1456 CE, and the Muslims took over, turning the temple into a mosque. I think that was bad? Well, again, the Mauryan War between the Ottoman Empire and the Republic of Venice happened around the 16th century, and during the attacks, a Venetian bomb landed on the Parthenon, which unfortunately had become home to munitions and other explosives too. Yeah, the once glorious Parthenon was very much damaged by the explosions. Around 1801 to 1804, British nobleman Thomas Bruce was also known as Lord Elgin. Elgin, and he took a large number of the sculptures and sold them off to the British Museum. And just like that, the glory days of the Parthenon came to an end. Although many people still find the place a fascinating sight to visit, there's no denying that we all wish we could just travel back in time to behold all the Parthenon's awesomeness before it was reduced to basically rubble. Thankfully, the temple's being restored, with the Greece Central Archaeological Council approving the restoration of the interior's Cella North Wall and other parts of the interiors in 2019. Whatever the goal of the early engineers who built the Great Pyramid of Giza was, I'm pretty sure they did it, right? I mean, we can all get behind that. I bet it's one of the first thing that comes to your mind when anyone mentions Egypt. One of the 7 wonders of the world, and the only one that's largely intact. The Great Pyramid of Giza has stood regally over thousands of years. A defining masterpiece, the Great Pyramid of Giza was built during the reign of the Egyptian pharaoh Khufu, who was determined to build the ultimate tomb befitting a king. Now, you might be wondering, why would anyone be eager to dig their own grave? Well, let's take a step back in history. The thing is that the pharaohs of Egypt believed that they were expected to become gods in the afterlife. To prepare for this supernatural dominance, they had to build massive pyramid tombs for themselves in their lifetime. These weren't your average run-of-the-mill tombs, though. They were filled with all the precious items that a king needed to live his life of a god in the afterlife. King Khufu wanted this so badly that he set about building what is now known as the Great Pyramid of Giza within 20 years or so, starting around 2550 BC. When it was done, Khufu's Great Pyramid measured approximately 481 feet, making it the tallest man-made monument in the world. And it confidently held this title for over 3,000 years before it was surpassed by the Lincoln Cathedral in 1311. Aside from Khufu's pyramid, there is the middle pyramid named the Khafre Pyramid, which measures 448 meters, and the last and actually smallest pyramid named Menkaure, which measures 215 feet tall. All these pyramids were built for kings. Each massive pyramid was also built so intricately that they were a part of a larger complex comprising 2 mortuary temples, as well as tombs for members of King Khufu's immediate family and court, solar boat pits, 3 small pyramids for Khufu's wives, and other things. It was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1979, and with pretty good reason. For a monument built in an age of no internet and advanced technologies, the Great Pyramid is one of the most striking creations that the world has honestly ever seen. With most of the smooth white limestone casing removed, the Great Pyramid's height has been significantly reduced to 454 feet. However, it's still pretty tall, and it stands majestically and is a tourist center now. So if you're not sure of where to go for vacation, go to Giza. It'll be fun, you know. Speaking of ancient landmarks, without a mention of Petra and Jordan is almost impossible. Also known as El Batra, this ruin showcasing Arabic history as far back as the Hellenistic age is one of the most historical sites in the world. Located in southern Jordan, Petra was inhabited as far back as the 4th century BC by the Nabateans, who were nomadic Arabs. The Nabateans transformed Petra into a major trading hub and the capital of their kingdom, since it was close to the incense trade routes and provided protection from enemies due to its mountainous terrains. However, the Romans conquered Petra in 106 CE, and they became a Roman province named Arabia Petraea. And although they continued to flourish, the change in trading routes started to affect its economy. On the morning of May 19th of 363 AD, a terrible earthquake, which in fact wasn't the first, hit Petra, and many of its freestanding structures collapsed. Although it could never fully recover from the massive damages caused by the earthquake, Petra continued to flourish until the early 12th century, when the Crusaders settled in the capital and even built an outpost. At this time, the population had so greatly declined that Petra, or whatever remained of it, was unknown to the Western world until 1812, when it was rediscovered by Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, a Swiss explorer who had been traveling using the name Ibrahim ibn Abdullah. Petra stands out for its austere beauty, surrounded by sandstone cliffs and structures half-built, half-carved into rocks that showed just how innovative the ancient men could be. There's a treasury also known as Al-Kazne, which is actually a tomb of the Nabatean king Aritas III, and is one of the most visited monuments in Petra. A massive theater said to have held up to 8,500 people is located at the foot of the mountain called En Nirj, and is used for gladiator fights, dramas, and poetry reading. There's also the high place of sacrifice, known as Aimad Ba, located at the top of Jebel Madba mountain, and it was believed that animal sacrifices and libations took place here. Other notable structures include the Petra Church, the Great Temple, the Royal Tombs, and the Colonnade Street, and several others scattered across this historical landmark. Although Petra was listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985, not a lot has really changed about it. Since the area is prone to flash flood and earthquakes and other natural phenomena, the monuments in Petra are very vulnerable, and increased tourist attraction also contributes to further damage of these monuments. Oh, come on. Who isn't a sucker for mushy love stories? Because, your boy is. And I bet you'd be surprised to find out that one of the greatest landmarks of all times is basically based on a love story. The Taj Mahal, meaning the crown of the palace, is a famous ivory white marble mausoleum built in 1631 by Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan in honor of his favorite wife, Mumtaz Mahal. Mumtaz, the fourth wife out of 7, was clearly the most loved and recognized companion of her husband. She had already borne 13 children for the emperor and was pregnant with the 14th. On June 17th of 1631, she hemorrhaged while giving birth to their 14th child, Gauhar Ara Begum. Her body was initially buried in a walled garden known as Zainabad in Burnapur, and there were reports that Shah Jahan was so deep in grief that he isolated himself, and by the time that he returned a year after, all of his hair had turned white. He gave orders for her body to be excavated and returned to Agra. He then commenced to construct what would become the most iconic building in the world. Located on the right bank of the river Yamuna, where the grave of the Mumtaz Mahal was located, in Agra, Uttar Pradesh, India, the Taj Mahal was commissioned in 1631. The building started in 1632, and the mausoleum itself was completed in 1648, while other parts of the project were completed in 1953, taking a total of over 20 years. The tomb of Mumtaz Mahal is just one of several structures on the 42-acre land. It also includes the tomb of Shah Jahan, a mosque, gardens, courtyards, a guest house, and other buildings. The structure is said to have cost an estimated 32 million rupees, which in recent times is close to 70 billion rupees, summing up to $856,263,800 today. In 1983, the Taj Mahal was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site for being the jewel of Muslim art, and in 2007, it won the new 7 Wonders of the World initiative. Like several other existing monuments, the Taj Mahal is some sort of mecca for tourists, with millions of visitors yearly. There's actually a 3-tier pricing system, with Indian citizens paying a low fee of 50 rupees, citizens of SAARC and BIMSTEC countries paying 540 rupees, while foreigners pay up to 1,100 rupees. Famous dignitaries like Queen Elizabeth, Vladimir Putin, Jimmy Carter, Donald Trump, and even Dwight Eisenhower have all paid a visit to get a glimpse of the Taj Mahal. One of those infinite structures that may last for a lifetime, the epochal Taj Mahal is indeed a jewel that showcases India's rich history. Do you remember the Wall from George R.R. Martin's book series that inspired the popular TV show The Game of Thrones? Or just Game of Thrones, I'm so sorry. Well, the Great Wall of China is a realistic version of the wall. And while it might not compare to the colossal wall made of solid ice, it sure is a sight for sore eyes. The Great Wall of China started with a series of the first walls built as far back as the 7th century BC by Qin Shi Huang. The most popular sections of the wall built by the Ming Dynasty around 1368 to 1644. Just like the wall in the Game of Thrones, the Great Wall of China comprises a series of walls built across the northern borders of Imperial China and several Chinese states to act as fortifications against nomadic groups from the Eurasian steppe. The Great Wall also acted as border controls and included watchtowers, garrison stations, troop barracks, and several other buildings. The total length of all the sections of the wall is estimated to be about 21,196 kilometers / 13,171 miles, with the walls constructed by the Ming Dynasty measuring up to 8,850 kilometers / 5,499 miles. The walls stretch collectively from Liaodong, a province in northeastern China, to Lop Lake, located in northwest China. They also stretch from the Sino-Russian border to the Tao River in the south, with a noticeable arc that outlines the edges of the Mongolian steppe. While I believe the Great Wall may have been awe-inspiring when it was built, it ain't what it used to be, naturally. Although some sections north of Beijing and closed to tourist centers have been carefully preserved and even renovated, the walls in many other locations have given way to years of ruin and destruction. In fact, the National Cultural Heritage Administration released a report in 2012 stating that 22% of the walls by the Ming Dynasty have disappeared, while 1,961 kilometers of the wall is just gone as well. There are predictions that more sections may disappear, especially, against harsh weather conditions. Even though the Great Wall has its fair share of tourists, it's still prone to vandalism and graffiti, and parts of it are used to provide stones for road and housing construction. Although efforts are being made to repair as many sections as possible, there's no denying that the place will always remain a shadow of its former self. Certain things come to mind when anyone mentions Britain. For me, it's always castles, chariots, knights, and quite frankly, a few scenes from the Merlin movie series, you know what I'm saying? Anyways, however, there's a breathtaking landmark for which Britain is actually famous for. You want to know what that is? Too bad. No, it's Stonehenge in England. The Stonehenge, located in Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, just 2 miles west of Emmonsbury, England, is one of the most intriguing prehistoric monuments. Unlike other monuments, this seems pretty uninteresting at first glance, but further investigation reveals a circle of vertical sarsen standing stones that are about 13 feet high and 7 feet wide, each weighing about 25 tons. Which is not all. These vertical standing stones are topped by connecting horizontal lintel stones. Inside this ring is another inner ring comprising smaller blue stones. And inside these are freestanding trilithons, which are 2 vertical sarsens joined by 1 lintel. This unique Stonehenge, aligned towards the sunrise and the summer solstice, was built around 3000 to 1500 BC, and it's set in the Neolithic Age. It's not only a very famous landmark in the UK, but also one that has had many scholars and archaeologists, as well as architects, wonder how this monument could have actually been made in an era void of modern technology. Now, Stonehenge is believed to be a burial ground, and over the years it's received worldwide recognition with visitors pouring in from all corners of the earth. In 1882, when the legislation to protect historic monuments in Britain was introduced, Stonehenge was listed as a legally protected scheduled monument. It was also added along with its surroundings to the list of UNESCO World Heritage Sites in 1986, although Stonehenge is currently owned by the Crown and managed by English Heritage. Evidently, a lot is bound to happen to a prehistoric monument, and while it has given way to ruin, the Stonehenge is largely there. Is mostly good, you know? In 1920, a nationwide appeal was launched to protect the monuments from the encroachment of buildings that had sprung up around them. Funds from the appeals donations were used to purchase the land around these monuments and handed it over to the National Trust to preserve in 1928. The buildings have all been removed, although the roads are still intact and the fields surrounding the monument are being transformed back to native chalk grassland. Stonehenge remains unrivaled when it comes to Neolithic architecture and engineering, which is little wonder why it makes its way onto my list. Imagine taking a step back into time, into an ancient fighting arena with the raging cheers of 50,000 to 80,000 spectators just going, "Woo, baby!" as bloody gladiators fight themselves or wild animals to the death. Well, the Colosseum, located in the city of Rome, Italy, is the sort of place for this, and it's one of the largest structures in the world. Formerly known as the Flavian Amphitheater, the Colosseum was constructed under the reign of Emperor Vespasian between 70 AD and 72 AD, and it was completed around 80 AD under the reign of his heir, Emperor Titus, and it was built as a gift for the Roman people. The name was later changed to the Colosseum in honor of the great statue of Nero, located at the entrance of the Domus Aurea. This Domus Aurea, also known as the Golden Palace, was built by Emperor Nero on the Oppian Hill in ancient Rome. Towering 4 stories high, the Colosseum is made of travertine limestone, a volcanic rock known as tuff, and a brick-faced concrete, capable of holding 50,000 to 80,000 spectators. Due to this relatively large amount of spectators, this colossal structure has 80 entrances, with 2 for participants in the contest or event, another 2 for the exclusive use of the Emperor, and 76 for spectators. This Colosseum measures 188 meters in length, 57 meters in height, and about 156 meters in width, making it one of the biggest amphitheaters built in the Roman Empire. The Colosseum was built mainly for contests between gladiators and other public spectacles, which included dramas based on Roman mythology, animal hunts, executions, and reenactments of battles. Over time, the Colosseum has been transformed from a gladiatorial arena into a fortress, cemetery, workshop, storehouse, church, and even a castle. Yeah, no, this astonishing structure has also had its fair share of disasters. Yeah, I know, as is the theme of this list. From earthquakes and stone robbers to barely escaping bombing that occurred in Rome between 1963 and 1964. However, it remains an incredible symbol representing ancient imperial Rome and how advanced their supposedly ancient civilization was. It's pretty advanced. The Colosseum, or what remains of it, still stands strong, and it's one of Rome's most visited tourist attractions. More than 6 million visitors come to glimpse the awe-inspiring Colosseum and its majestic architectural design. It was listed as one of the 7 wonders of the modern world on July 7th of 2007. The Colosseum is also some sort of religious symbol, as, for instance, the Pope Benedict XVI led the Way of the Cross procession in the Colosseum every Good Friday. The final landmark / monument on my list featured in Star Wars franchise Episode 4, A New Hope, if you hadn't seen that somehow. And it was used to film sequences on the Rebel base, Yavin 4. If you ever happen to be in Guatemala, then you should probably make a stop at the Tikal ruin site. This site houses signs of ancient Mayan civilization. Tikal is a Mayan ruin site that features 5 huge temples. Located in a rainforest in the department of El Petén in northern Guatemala, is part of the Tikal National Park, and it's got a history that goes as far back as the 4th century BC. That's old. Tikal was so powerful at the time that it dominated most of the Mayan region in almost every aspect that, well, existed. And this authority stretched as far as the great metropolis of Teotihuacan and the distant valley of Mexico. This influence of Tikal was so great that it was rather surprising to find it abandoned after thousands of years. Although there's no concrete explanation for why the city was deserted, many experts believe that its people may have fled the city around 900 AD following a drought and epidemic outbreaks. However, the structure at the Tikal ruin site gives a glimpse of what life was like when it was once a powerful capital. It features 6 large pyramids labeled temples 1 to 6, since each pyramid houses a temple structure. One of the temples, Temple 4, is the tallest temple pyramid at Tikal, measuring 230 feet, and it's also one of the largest pyramids in all of the Maya region built in the 8th century. The Tikal also comprises 57,600 hectares of wetlands, palm forests, savannas, and vast areas of lush vegetation. It also features rich ecosystems and wildlife, with a variety of wild cats, monkeys, and even over 300 species of birds. Whether you'd like to visit this place alone or through a guided tour, the Tikal ruin site is truly remarkable, and it feels like a trip back in time, even though it hasn't been fully unearthed. Thankfully, the authenticity of the Tikal National Park has been largely maintained, and there's also been some repairs and renovations on some structures of the site. In 1931, the Tikal was declared a national monument, and in May of 1955, its surrounding was declared Tikal National Park. It was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1979 as well.
One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Colossus of Rhodes was an awe-inspiring monument that symbolized the innovation that existed even in ancient times. The Colossus stood at approximately 108 feet, making it the tallest ancient statue at the time, with the same height as the modern Statue of Liberty. It was built as a representation of the Greek sun god Helios in the city of Rhodes, to celebrate the successful defense of Rhodes against an invasive attack by Demetrius Poliorcetes, who had plans of besieging the city. The Colossus was sculpted by chairs of Lindos, and was made of bronze and iron tie bars, with brass plates to form the skin. Construction of the Colossus was believed to have started in 292 BC, and after 12 years it was finally completed in 280 BC. While many illustrations show the statue straddling the entrance of the Mandrake harbor, studies have shown that it is technically impossible. The Colossus of Rhodes most likely stood to one side of the harbor. Nevertheless, it must have been a remarkable structure, as it was even referenced in ancient Greek anthologies of poetry. To you, O sun, the people of Dorian Rhodes set up this bronze statue reaching to Olympus, when they had pacified the waves of war and crowned their city with the spoils taken from the enemy. Unfortunately, this magnificent structure, which stood for 54 years, was toppled by an earthquake that occurred about 226 BC, causing significant damage to not just the statue, but other parts of Rhodes City. It is believed that the statue snapped at the knee and fell to land. Although Ptolemy III offered to pay for the reconstruction of the statue, the people of Rhodes were scared to accept the offer, as the Oracle of Delphi had made them believe they had offended the sun god. The fallen Colossus remained that way for over 800 years, yet its ruins were impressive enough to drive visitors from all over to behold what was once one of the most breathtaking monuments that ever stood. Although much isn't known about the remains of the Colossus today, many believe that its remains were sold off by the Arabians during the raid in 654 AD, where these parts were melted off and sold to a Jewish merchant of Edessa, who reportedly loaded the bronze onto 900 camels. While we may not really know what this monument truly looked like, the Colossus of Rhodes is a fascinating structure that has continued to live on years after its existence, and is one that will always be remembered when the most incredible monuments in history are mentioned.
If you're wondering what happened to the greatest landmarks/monuments in history, well, these structures have proven to be unshakable. And even though they can't really be compared to their glory days, their legacies are certainly going to live on forever. Eager to go on another little mini time travel adventure? Well, click on that video right there. Do it now, and I'll be waiting for you. Later, friends.